Hi everybody, thanks so much for joining us as we present this series of stop motion animation videos that I've called The Studio. My name is William Couig. I think if you told me 30 days ago that I'd make a presentation with these videos at the GAS conference, I wouldn't believe you. So I think the best way to begin is just from the start. Little background on me. I've been blowing glass for 20 years. I do all my work out of Urban Glass. I learned how to blow glass there. I actually went to school for English and with a minor in writing seminars and film studies. So I do have a little bit of a background in storytelling, and really that's kind of what I feel like I'm doing with these episodes. Anyway, like I said, I do all my work out of Urban Glass. I have a small studio business. I do a lot of work for 11 Madison Park, the restaurant here in the city. I make all their custom glass. I've made work for Calvin Klein Home over the years. So I have a list of clientele as well as my own work that I make. My main show, I do the Architectural Digest show every spring, which has been postponed until the fall this year. But anyway, the pause with we have here in New York with the COVID crisis, I had time on my hands. I have a 7-year-old daughter, she's doing school from home, and one day, we play with Legos a lot, and one day she wanted to play with Legos, and generally I make like a castle for her or something, but randomly I suggested, let's make a glass studio. And that was about 32 days ago now. We started making a few little things, a little glory hole. I made a furnace, and then really started coming together and started looking like a glass studio. And I put some pictures online, and everything, I tell people, came together very organically. I got a lot of comments from people. One of the comments was from Jason Bauer, a friend of ours at the studio, and he said, now you have to make stop motion animations with it. And I thought to myself, yeah, maybe I should try that. So a couple days later, I took a couple pictures in the studio with the character, doing a real rudimentary video of the character taking a heat and sitting down at the bench. And for me, a big thing with these videos, because they're with Legos, which in itself are a little lighthearted, I really wanted things to be accurate, like pinpoint accuracy. So when we were building the studio, there were a lot of little accessories that I'd see in the Lego bins. I'd be like, oh, that would be perfect, for making a pipe warmer. Or we had like a little archway, and I was like, that would be great for making a garage. So I really wanted to make the studio look as lifelike as possible. And so we had that look very accurate. So I started making a video. I think the first video was pretty, like I said, pretty rudimentary. I think it was maybe 20 frames. But there was one little move where they were going from the bench from the glory hole back to the bench, where they flipped the pipe over. And even though it was like a really basic video, I think that one little move was the thing that kind of like draws people in, because they're like, oh wow, that really does look pretty accurate. And so I made that first video and I posted it, and I think I said, hey, it's a start. And I got some interesting feedback, and I think when I first posted the pictures of the studio, and I posted a picture of the cold shop that I made, somebody made a offhand comment about where's so-and-so? And so episode 2 was Erica Rosenfeld cutting in the glass in the cold shop, because somebody had asked, oh, where's Erica? So the episode 2 became The Cut, and that was her cutting at a wet saw. And around that time, I think it actually was Erica was the one who told me that this is her new favorite series. And so I started thinking to myself, well, maybe I should jump into this feet first. And so I sat down and put pen to paper, and I put together an outline of 24 episodes, I think, of different things that I could do. I just started thinking of all the variety of things that you do. And the great thing about Legos is that it's set up for stop motion animation. I mean, there are characters that are supposed to be, moving around, but you have them on one little spot, and you can move them just incrementally, which works perfectly for stop motion animation. So I started coming up with ideas, and I think I fleshed out maybe like a season, a season, 24 episodes that I could kind of work my way through. And so I think with the third episode, it's called The Transfer. And I was like, well, I did a couple little things in the first episode, but maybe let's do something a little more substantial. And I knew that when you do a regular punny transfer, when the assistant receives the piece, they do a little dip with the pipe so you don't get any chips inside the piece. And so I made sure to like put that movement in there. And it kind of goes back to that theme of accuracy, because if it had like that one little element in the first one where they flip the pipe over, if we had that little dip with the punny transfer, that's going to really drive home like the authenticity of it. And it's also where I kind of started thinking about how I framed these episodes, where I wanted everything to kind of finish off the way it started. That way, because when you show them on Instagram, they loop, they repeat automatically. And so if they start off where they begin, then it's kind of like a nice seamless loop. And to be honest with you, these episodes happen so quickly that it's kind of nice to watch them in repeat and watch them over a couple of times. And so I thought if I finish it off the way that it starts, it makes it a little easier to watch it, in a loop. So that's what I did with The Transfer. And, like I said, that right around then, I think, is when I decided, well, maybe I should give this a name, like The Studio. It was a nice... What I liked about it was it's a generic name that kind of speaks to everybody. I think all of us in glass, we love being in the studio, and I think it's a term that people use, hey, what's going on in the studio? Will I see you at the studio? You're going to be at the studio, things like that. And so I thought it was a nice title that would speak to people. It's also a little bit of an homage to The Office. I'm a big fan of that show, and a big fan of like TV now. I mean, we're in the golden era of television where you get to tell a story over a much longer arc than you would in filmmaking. And so you see a lot of shows that are, 5 or 6 seasons, where you have showrunners thinking about what they know, how it's going to end, and they just need to know how they're going to get there and figure it out. And so that's what I started thinking about in terms of this. If I was going to jump in feet first, I might as well do it seriously. And so it was right around then, episode 3, that I thought to myself, well, the first 3 episodes, I think I was doing it when we had the best light in the apartment during the day. But you can tell there are shadows. And so I decided to break out my photography equipment. And that's when the production quality kind of took a bit of a step up. It was right there at episode 4, which was The Gather, excuse me. I featured Jason Bauer, who's the one who suggested I do these stop motion videos. And so that was like the first episode where I was like, well, let's do sort of something specific, So we had him take a gather, and he comes out and he uses the pipe cooler, and then, he presents himself almost right where he started off the video again. And that sort of thing, when I started figuring out that I'd try to make a season out of this, I kind of had to go back a few steps. I named those first 2 episodes, which weren't named. So I named the first one The Heat. I named the second one The Cut. The third one was The Transfer. The fourth one was The Gather. My daughter, Kira, she's a big fan of the show, The Amazing World of Gumball. And all of the episodes on there are 1-word titles. So that was sort of where I got the idea for that. And I thought it was like a great way to kind of make a series out of these episodes. Like I said, I kind of feel like I'm storytelling here. So a lot of like the beginning is not only like setting the stage of the set, of the studio. So not only am I introducing characters and people, but also I'm kind of like familiarizing people with glass blowing. So I kind of liked that the first one was The Heat. It was a very simple thing. I also liked that the second one was The Cut. Then we did a punny transfer. Then we did a gather. And so I started getting into kind of like basic steps that we do with glass blowing. So we had, I think the 5th episode was the Marver, the 6th episode was the jack line, 7th episode was the blow up. So a lot of these things were not only going over like these rudimentary steps of glass blowing, but there were also exercises for me, because I've jokingly told people a lot of what I'm doing here is kind of like relearning glass blowing. Like I had to figure out how to gather, like I had to figure out how to marver, I had to figure out how to do a transfer, all these things, but like in stop motion Lego ease. So a lot of it were kind of stepping stones for me, and along the way I'm kind of introducing people to, you know, these personalities and the people that we have that are making great work at Urban Glass on any given day. Because that's the thing that's great about Urban Glass. It's such a large community and there's so much work being made there. On any given day, you can go in and there are people either making work for themselves or people making work for other artists or designers. You know, it's a great thing about living and working in New York is that all sorts of opportunities and projects come up. So there are all sorts of things that you could be making on any given day at Urban Glass. So there's sort of like an endless conveyor belt of material coming at you. And, you know, for me, with each episode, I try to like start out with like a core idea and then kind of branch out from there. A lot of it starts with the accessories that I see in the Legos. I look at the pieces and I have a bin set aside where I find something interesting. I put it in this small bin, and that's sort of like my idea bin. And then I try to like have that sort of like mesh, see how that meshes together with, you know, my list of story ideas. Yeah, so, you know, we started making our way through like the first, you know, 10 or so episodes, doing different sort of rudimentary steps. And then like around episode 11, we started kind of bundling different things together. Like I think on episode 11 actually, episode 11 was The Champ, was where we featured Deborah Tedesco. I figured if I was doing something on Brooklyn glass blowing, I had to feature Deborah. I mean, I've been working in glass here in Brooklyn for 20 years, and I've known Deborah ever since I first started. And so I thought it was great that she won the Netflix Blown Away series. So I wanted to do a little episode on her. A lot of it came from the fact that I found like a little clear disc, that Lego disc that I could put under hot water and bend up, and it would look exactly like the signature Venetian taco server that you made on the show. So it gave me that idea. And also it kind of played into the theatricality element that I wanted to add to each episode. You know, for this episode, she just won this competition, so I was thinking to myself, well, I'd like it to be like she's doing like a routine at the Olympics or something. So, you know, we started with her at the glory hole. When she goes back to the bench, she does that pipe flip, but I had her do an extra 360, so it looked like she was throwing in an extra trick. Then when she sits down, she grabs her paddle and she quickly gives the glass like a couple of swipes that takes it from a round shape to that flattened shape that looks like you can fit a taco into it perfectly. You know, the thing is, when everybody does demos in glass blowing, usually you always like finish it off by standing up and like showing your piece to the crowd. So I thought that's sort of like how maybe she should finish it off. So she stands up, I have her kind of come out to stand up with the piece, and I gave her like a little hop at the end as though she's like sticking her landing to her routine, and then a little like fist pump, you know, as though she like, you know, stuck the landing and she knew she did well. And that was how we finished it off. And that I thought was like a great episode, like summing up the champ, you know, because I thought she was very deserving of winning the series, you know, of anybody in glass. I mean, I've seen her make everything over the years. And so, to be honest, when I found out she was on the show, I knew she was going to do well. So it was great that she won. So, yeah, so from there we moved on. I did a couple of episodes where we did blow molds. I figured it's like an interesting way to branch out, show something a little different. So we did blow molds with Pam Sabroso and Allison Siegel. We did a blow mold project that we did for the studio for one of the resident artists, Dean Erdman, where we blew into blow mold to make a life-size ATV tire for her. So that's one of the episodes. And then I was basically working my way up to the last week of the last week of the season, which would work up to like 24. I was thinking like old school, like television series had 24 episodes. I was kind of working my way up to 24. So I figured like the last week, maybe I could do like a 5-part series and do like a full demonstration from start to finish, and start off with like a starter bubble, working all the way up to like the transfer and finishing a piece off. And I noticed as I'm playing with a lot of these Lego cylinders that when you put them together, you get like a little groove in the side of them. And one of my more popular series that I've done over the years is something called the Groove series, where I take the jacks and I'll basically make, it looks like I'm making a RISD ring in the side of a piece, but I don't squeeze it together. So it leaves like this indelible groove that you see there. And when I group them together in these sort of still lifes of vessels, you see these interesting negative spaces in there. So not only a nice sort of complementary array of lines and curves, but you also have like these interesting arrays from the grooves. Anyway, I thought it was something that I could do in Lego. So I thought, well, if I'm going to do this 5-part series, well, maybe I will do it of myself, and I could do this Groove series. And then I figured, out of this whole thing, if I were actually able to get a full start to finish demonstration of a piece of me doing it in Lego, that would actually be like a pretty neat accomplishment. So that's what I went for. I did like 5 straight days doing start to finish. What's nice is that it allowed me to concentrate on like the filmmaking, because a lot of the work each day, just figuring out the episode, is trying to get the accessories together, trying to get the hair helmet like right for everybody, all these little things together. So you're looking and trying to assemble the set. And so I figured if I was doing the same thing with myself and my assistant Ron Johnson 5 days in a row, I wouldn't have to worry about all that. I'd kind of be picking up right where I left off. So I did that for a week. And then, it all came together very well. Like the 5 parts, it really was start to finish, looked like a full demonstration. And I thought, well, maybe what I'm going to do, that actually took me up to episode 23. And I thought, well, episode 24, what I'll do is it'll be like the studio movie. I'm going to edit all those pieces together. From the beginning, people have been suggesting that I add soundtracks to these, which was something I was trying to avoid because, like I said, they were short clips. They repeat a lot, and there isn't any music that I want to listen to over and over again, like every 6 seconds. So I just avoided that. But I figured if I'm putting together this larger movie, that is an assemblage of these smaller episodes, I figured it'd be worth it. And I figured, well, I'd always thought Glass Onion by the Beatles was like a great tune that, has obvious references. And to be honest with you, it's like I had always thought, well, maybe I should make like a Glass Onion, maybe I should make a series of these like rock and roll themed items or something. So maybe that's something I'm going to get to now that I've done this with Glass Onion. But anyway, that's how I came up with the idea of the soundtrack for it. It worked out perfectly. To be honest with you, a couple of the snare hits worked out perfectly with the punty transfer. And it came together really well. We have the soundtrack on there. And it is a great thing. Like I've said, it's like this whole thing is a learning experience. Like I don't have any experience in stop motion animation. I really don't have any, like I loved playing with Legos when I was a kid, but it's not like I was a huge Lego fan. But I was really lucky that, as I was going along, to be honest with you, there's one day I went out to my parents halfway through. I've been doing their shopping for them every week, and I went out to see them. And I was like, hey, can you check the basement, see if there are any Legos down there? And so they found a couple of my old, like, lunar sets. So that's where, like, all the Moon Men came from, like, about 2 weeks into this first season, so to speak. So, like I said, it's a learning experience. I had no experience with editing or putting any titles or anything on that, but I downloaded some software and I put it all together. It was a good excuse to figure out how to edit all these clips together, because to be honest with you, like I was dying to see what it looks like when they're all put together. And to be absolutely honest, it's like that's the way it is on a daily basis. I love making these videos. Like I sit there and it's like for 2 hours you're taking these pictures and you just really, it's like as you're going along, you think you know how it's going to look, but you really don't know until you assemble them all and you hit that button and it turns it into a movie. And I don't know, there's that anxiousness, that nervousness of the trepidation of waiting for it to come together. Is sort of like an interesting feeling, and it's something that is really rewarding now, because I think for all of us, we all love glass, we love working with glass, but we're not able to get into the glass studio now. So I'm very fortunate that I've been able to find something that gives me that that sense of accomplishment that glass did. You know, these things aren't easy to make. And, you know, at the end of the day, when you make it, to be honest with you, it's sort of the same feeling when I first started making work in glass. And I'd look at pieces and I'd be like, wow, I can't believe I made that. You know, I mean, really a lot of glass making is like you're making something out of nothing. And you're like, you know, you make a nice vessel or something out of like a chunk of color, or, you know, out of raw silica, you know, is what it comes from. So, you know, making these pieces has been very rewarding. Making these episodes has been very rewarding for me. You know, it has been a learning experience. I've told some people, it's like I feel like it's like a perfect combination of so many circumstances for me. I mean, I'm 48 years old. I was born in 1972. I've said for years that I'm really happy having been born in 1972, because my lifespan has covered you know, that transition from like the analog era to the digital era. And then when you think about what I'm doing here with these Lego stop motion animation, you know, I mean, it really is you know, these videos live at that seam where the transition from analog to digital actually occurs, you know. And a lot of what I'm doing in these videos, you know, really, you know, a lot of what you see is kind of photography magic. You know, what I've learned from this, you know, is that like what you do doesn't necessarily matter. It's what you see on the frames. And so like I do a lot of spec works with calipers, and you learn what's really important, what are the critical dimensions. And really what I've learned from this, when you're filmmaking, is like it doesn't really matter like what you're doing. It doesn't matter if the guy's has both hands on the pipe. It really just matters that it looks like he's holding the pipe. And so if you have the right angle, he doesn't necessarily have to be holding it, so you can actually get like the scene done. And so that's kind of what I've learned from this. And, you know, the skill set that you need to do this is a certain amount of determination and attention to detail that just exist in glass making. And so, you know, I don't know if I was destined to make these, but I do know that glass has trained me for years to be able to do this. And what's nice about these videos is it doesn't really, it's not so much making, you know, things happen, but a lot of what happens here is what you think you're seeing is created by the motions of the characters. And there's so much innate choreography in glass making that it just provides that choreography, you know, that you need to do this. So a lot of times when I'm like doing something, like I did one where there's like a Marini pole that I've done since, you know, this week after episode 24, the studio movie was done. And we were doing a Marini pole, and I know that just from making the shears and the arm with the shears going up and down, that kind of makes you think like you're seeing something being pulled. And then as you add like the little increments of the Legos, it actually makes it look like it's moving. And so you're suddenly making like Legos look like they're in motion. And I've sort of jokingly started referring to it as liquid Legos. I think the first time I did that was with the color drop in the week-long demo. And I was just amazed that I was able to make it look like there was Legos in motion. So, you know, that's really where we are right now. It's like I finished up episode 24. I've done another 6 episodes since then. Took a couple days off after I did the episode 24, because that was like a real deal, old school season's worth of television. So I took a couple days off. It served me well, because these last 6 have been great. Like I said, it's like I feel like I was just kind of learning, you know, my way along with the first 24 episodes, and now I'm kind of, you know, I was doing one little thing in each episode, and now I'm able to bundle a couple of things in each episode. So we're getting a little more ambitious. I've got a lot more ideas in store. We're going to try and ride this out until the pause ends here in New York, because I have an idea how we're going to end it all. But I'd like to continue this until, like I said, where we were open back up here in Brooklyn, because I think that'd be a great way to finish it off. And it'll keep me busy until then. So thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in and checking us out. My Instagram handle, I release everything, 1 movie a day on Instagram. My handle is @FurthurDesign, FurthurDesign. So you can check me out on Instagram. We also put everything, I started a YouTube channel under LegoFurthur Productions, because I think eventually I'm going to get back to just having glass on my Instagram feed, but we're certainly going to continue these stop motion animation videos because they're just so much fun, and I think people like them, and I think they're accurate, and they really look like great glass blowing, and who doesn't like Lego? So thanks so much for joining me and listening to me for the last 25 minutes or so, and I hope to see you all soon. Check us out on Instagram. I'd love to hear some feedback. Take care. Thanks, everybody.